Welcome to Masikhanye, Rays of Hope, a Christian lifestyle talk show that seeks to inspire and empower individuals, families, and communities as they seek to make this world a better place. And we are now concluding what has been an exciting journey where we look into the theme of the Sabbath. And today we're looking into the Sabbath as a lifestyle. And once again, I am joined by our resident pastor, Pastor Stander. Patrick Stander, welcome to Masikhanye, my friend.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be back. And it's also not so good because we are having our conclusion.
I know what you mean. But it's been incredible, though. It's been quite a journey. I've learned so much from you and the many other speakers that guests that we've engaged with. Mm-hmm. I trust that you've also enjoyed yourself.
I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. It's good to reflect on things that we've sometimes taken for granted.
Sure. And of course, as a way of ending this, what has been a very inspiring and encouraging and informative a series of conversations where we have zoomed on the day of the Sabbath. But today I want us to look into the Sabbath as a lifestyle, the Sabbath outside the confines of one day. Maybe the first thought is God really interested in what we do outside the Sabbath? If He's given us a day of worship, somebody would say, well, it doesn't matter what I do outside that day. For 6 days, I've already given God a day so I can live my life. Is God interested in what we do for the rest of the week?
Indeed, He is. And we probably need to submit that God is not, or rather, we are not giving God a day. God has given us a day to look forward to. One author that I read many moons ago actually stated that true Sabbath keepers start preparing for the Sabbath on the first day of the week. So we are not giving God anything.
Sure.
He has given us a gift that we are just getting to, benefit from.
Sure.
Now as we have been observing the Sabbath, and there's still much to learn.
Sure.
I remember when I was a student, we had one visiting professor speaking on the subject of the Sabbath. And in his final statement, he said, I don't keep the Sabbath keeps me.
I love that.
And I've remembered that since, because I've come to actually compare the Sabbath and observance of the Sabbath to the practice of returning tithe. Now, for those who don't know, God, in His Word, requires of us to return to Him 10% of our income. And then He gives us the 90% to spend. Now, here, God requires of us this one day to dedicate to Him. And He has given it to us as a gracious gift to enjoy. And at the same time, He has given us another 6 days to prepare for the celebration of the seventh day Sabbath. So are we giving Him something? No. He has given us everything.
I love that. But is there a relationship should there be a relationship between the Sabbath day and the other days outside of the Sabbath? Perhaps
Yes, there should be. There should be. For all intents and purposes, I get to the Sabbath, I'm revived, I'm refreshed, I'm rejuvenated. God blesses me so that I am able for the next 6 days to be a blessing to others, to be active, to earn a living, to be educated, to develop myself. And this is why God also reflects in His Word on us, on how we spend the 6 days. All right? And this is why you actually have an instruction about labor during the 6 days leading up to the seventh day Sabbath.
And The beautiful thought that comes from what you're saying, because sometimes we can easily look into the Sabbath as a way of escaping the world. Oh, I can't wait for the Sabbath. This is a hard week, as an escapist, an escape platform. But what I gather from what you're saying is that no. The Sabbath is actually a springboard for you to go and face the rest of the week, not to run away from that week.
That's exactly it. And you will read some authors actually reflecting on the worship of God.
Sure.
And one of them actually suggests that if you have bowed before God, you are able to stand before anyone. And so when we get into the context of worship, we come away from that experience ready to work. And some refer to it as Sabbath economics, because you observe the Sabbath, you come away, you earn, you develop, you live, because you have been prepared to live life. You have had time to rest. You have had time to gather your thoughts. You have had time to reconnect and to strengthen your most significant relationships. And when you look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11, that we have referred to in one of our previous engagements, you will see that there are relational aspects in that commandment. Also, there are social justice issues going on right there, because you are supposed to give rest even to the stranger within your gates. The person who works for you should be treated fairly. The animals that are in your care should rest. So everything and everyone related to you should pause, because we are getting ready for the new week.
Yeah, I like that. And another thought is as if, it's very easy to get attached or get used to, as they say, usuality does conquer, the brain. When you've got people that are working for you, it's easy to think that you own them. It's easy to think that you have the ultimate authority over their lives. It's as if the Sabbath comes in every week as a check to that temptation. But hey, remember, you may be holding a more powerful position, but you are equal. And the animal that you think you own or that you can do anything about, and then the Sabbath comes and, hey, remember, this was also created by me. Your thought on that?
Yes, and in the context of religion, let's say you are the manager at work, and then we go to the place of worship. I am your subordinate at work, but at church, I'm the religious leader, and I lead out in the worship service. And the roles are now changed. And you, during the week, are giving the instructions, but in the context of religion and in the context of the community of faith, I'm the one giving the instructions. And so every week, there's a reminder, check yourself.
I like that.
Check yourself, because the Sabbath levels the playing field.
I like that. Tell me, what are some of the ways that God would like us not to miss from the Sabbath, and how those should impact the rest of the week?
Very good question. Because if we are going to be observing the Sabbath, it's good to study the life of Christ and how Christ spent his Sabbaths. You have in the New Testament record of Christ going to the synagogue or the place of gathering to be in that context where there was the reading of the scriptures. And so the scriptures fortify the mind. They develop the mind and the thinking. They reshape and refocus how we look at life. Then you have Christ out in nature, but you will never come across any record where Christ actually isolated himself from people in the context of the Sabbath. There are records, however, where Christ would go at other times to isolate himself, to pray and all that. There's place and time for that. But you will see in the New Testament that Christ spent time with people. Fellowship.
I love that.
Dealing with people's life, touching people positively, impacting people.
And
in a
even healing
positive
them.
way.
Yeah.
Healing, restoring people. So he was on a mission to better the lives of people.
Sure. I like that. So you're actually saying that because, I mean, it's another misnomer and it's another misunderstanding about the Sabbath, that Sabbath should mean a total cessation of every activity. But you are actually saying that, yes, there are activities that should be stopped and ceased being done, but there are also activities that it is critical that are continued to be done, especially on Sabbath.
Yes, one example of that, we had a teacher at college who taught our ethics class.
Sure.
And so as students, we used to work. I had 3 jobs as a student. And there were guys who were doing access control at the gate. And they were working so hard that they could hardly go to the place of worship on Sabbath. And we were encouraged to actually consider going to replace them at the gate and to give them time to rest, even though what they were doing was essential and necessary. They also needed to congregate with others, to fellowship with fellow believers, and to worship God in that context. And so some of us actually went to the gate and said, Guy, go to the place of worship. I will take your shift. I don't want any payment. I don't want anything.
Beautiful.
I will take your shift.
Sure. I love the principle there. Because, especially as faith communities that keep the Sabbath, we normally leave it to the person to make every means to be able to be able to do that, to observe the Sabbath. But the example that you've just shared is that we also, as the community, have the responsibility of assisting each other so that we can be able to enjoy this blessing, which is the Sabbath.
Yeah. So we are all free when I'm free.
Sure. In fact, yes, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who says that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Exactly. So my freedom should not infringe on yours, and I shouldn't be happy to be free to worship when you are not free to worship, because we exist in community. As I'm enjoying my relationship with God and as I'm enjoying the worship of God on the 7th-day Sabbath, I also have a responsibility towards others to help them to enjoy the same freedom. To worship.
Thanks. And thanks. I appreciate that. And then the other, is there any other maybe principle or that maybe we could glean from the Sabbath as it influences the rest of the week? I don't know what you think about this. Another one for me that comes to mind is the rest. The fact that we've been given one day to rest does not mean that we should work ourselves to a standstill during the week, that it is also critical and necessary for us to rest even during the week, that the Sabbath rest is there as a reminder that even as you work for the 6 days, do take the time to rest.
Yes, and our physical rest, we should know by now because we've reflected on the health benefits of Sabbath observance, but taking a pause during the week, resting regularly, taking time to catch your breath. That's important because it impacts on how well your brain functions. It impacts on how well your body functions. It even impacts on your temperament because if you are tired and irritable and hungry and all that, it doesn't go well. It impacts on your relationships with people because normally you are okay, and all of a sudden, because you have not rested well, you don't behave well. So resting at regular intervals, very important. And then you have that big quality pause, the check.
The check.
Where you say, okay, I can't do all of this by myself. Let me pause.
Right. Pastor Standard, as we are bringing this to a conclusion, I want to give you an opportunity. This is actually your last words in this series. Man, it has been great, but I can't end this without giving you another opportunity to share your closing shot with our viewers.
My closing statement would be that as we read the story of origins in the book of Genesis, we would do well to remember that we were created in the image of God. And God created us to have dominion over created things and over what He has placed in our care. We would also do well to remember that God created the seventh-day Sabbath as a priceless gift for us to enjoy as we emulate our Creator, not only in work, but also in rest. So we need to enter into God's rest.
Entering into God's rest. Pastor Standard, the last 5 weeks have been incredible. Thank you for taking the time to join us at Masikhanye. We really enjoyed it, and we're enriched and informed by your presence.
Thank you for having me. Blessings.
Our viewers, I trust that you have enjoyed that conversation with Pastor Standard. We are not yet done. Please stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
Greetings, friends. We're glad that you have chosen to join our series, Stories of Hope. And we want to offer you this free gift, a book entitled Hope for Today's Families. We look at issues such as preventing abuse, preventing marital distress, how to deal with children. I know that you will find this book as a welcome gift. We are looking forward to hearing from you. May God bless you.
A blessed family life is not a given. Happy and strong families are built through guidance and help. The Cape Conference virtual pastor is here. Chat with a pastor that has experience in lifestyle, relationships, trauma, and loss counseling. Chat with the Cape Conference virtual pastor on weekdays 3 to 8 p.m.
Welcome back to Masikhanye, Rays of Hope. My name is Sivu. I'm excited that I am once again joined by Dr. Adrian Platts. Dr. Platts is a professor at Helderberg College of Higher Education in Somerset West, South Africa. And he is helping me right now to look into the theme of Sabbath as a lifestyle. Dr. Platts, welcome to Masikhanye once again.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to be having you here as we are concluding what has been a very exciting and informative series where we are looking into, the Sabbath with the theme of rest for the restless world. And with you right now, I want us to look into the practicalities of Sabbath observance. Sometimes when we speak about the Sabbath, it tends to be synonymous with, don't do this and this. But how are we really to keep and practice Sabbath observance? Are there any biblical principles?
I think there are. One of the difficulties, I think, is that Sabbath observance in the modern age anyway,
Sure.
Began late. So with my own church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that began in the mid-19th century. And what happened is you had a lot of people who were Sunday observers that shifted to Sabbath, sort of the solemnity of the day. They kept on the Sabbath and not the Sunday. And what tended to happen was that they just took Sunday and did what they did on Sunday on a Sabbath. And when you raise the issue of biblical principles of Sabbath observance, obviously somebody who observes Sunday is not looking at the Sabbath to discover those principles. And you're right, we need to say, well, what are the principles of Sabbath observance? Because clearly there are things that would constitute Sabbath observance. I think we would have to begin with the notion of rest.
Sure.
And I think that the fourth command, which says that God worked 6 days in his act of creation and then rested on the seventh, and so commanded us to do likewise, means that whatever work we do in the week is not appropriate to do on Sabbath. So if you're a shopkeeper or a banker or a doctor, I need to be cautious about
Sure.
the doctor one because there are such things as essential services,
Sure.
or engineer, then that work that you do to make your living, that is your business, is not appropriate to do on Sabbath.
Sure.
And one should rest from that work. And that
Sure.
would probably be maybe the most foundational
Sure.
principle
Sure.
of Sabbath
Sure.
observance.
Yeah. Rest. And then, of course, without us, over dwelling on this point, but what does rest look like for a modern person? Does it mean just a total cessation of work, or is there active rest?
I think there is active rest, but whatever that activity is,
Sure.
it is not the activity that you have to do in the week, and that is key. So,
Sure.
so the activity would have to be in keeping with God's missions, our relationships
Sure.
with other people, possibly, and
Sure.
relationships to God.
Yeah.
There's a point that I want to raise here, and I
Yeah.
hope I have time to raise it, and that is, if you become a Sabbath keeper, then that raises the question of, but I have to work on a Sabbath. I have a job on the Sabbath. My career requires me to work on the Sabbath. And I can't observe Sabbath because I have to go to work on the Sabbath. And that is a serious problem of the modern age. It's not like we in ancient Israel where the entire nation kept the 6 days and then observed Sabbath, or worked the 6 days and observed Sabbath. And I think that it is the community of faith that has a grave responsibility to help people to transition to that and support them if there is a problem with Sabbath observance.
I love that.
think-
I absolutely love that. So we don't just tell you what you need to do, or what we think the Bible teaches you to do, but we also help you to do that because we know that you want to do it. I love that. Okay, the second one, we've just spoken about rest, and you clearly and aptly refer to it as foundational. Is there another tenet or principle that perhaps?
Well, I think that since it is God's Sabbath, we must turn to worship. And this, I think these ideas are present in current Sunday observance, the notion of rest and worship. And so it is appropriate to, I suppose the traditional term would be go to church on the Sabbath. But of course, the Sabbath, and we need to understand this, is oriented around the entire day. So and it's kept from sunset to sunset. So Friday sunset would be the beginning of Sabbath, and then Saturday sunset would be the end of the Sabbath. And during that time, I think worship services are appropriate. And so a certain percentage of the day, let us say, would certainly be taken up with just traditional resting, so sleeping at night and taking it easy, breaking from what you normally do in the week. But then worship services, singing, prayer, sermons, that sort of thing, I think would be appropriate for Sabbath observance.
Sure. Of course, we're going to integrate later on and look at this together holistically. So we've spoken about rest, and then we've just spoken about worship now, and then the third one?
Well, fellowship.
Of course. Yeah.
So the moment you have any worship experience, we understand that as being a communal thing. And the church meets together in order to worship, and that means that we are integrated with our fellow believers. I think one of the problems with modern worship styles is it's often a sermon where somebody stands up and preaches, and we all just sit there and sort of soak it up, and then we go home. And that would be sad for Sabbath observance, where fellowship is a key element. The idea that we could keep Sabbath on our own, I think, is fallacious. I think that no, Sabbath observance is something for the community of faith. And the community of faith should come together. They should eat together. I think Sabbath is a day of celebration, a day of happiness, a day of joy. That is the way that the Jews traditionally kept the day. It's a delight to the Lord, and it should be a delight to us. And so, eating meals together and that sort of thing would be appropriate.
And of course, the idea I hear you and I understand you to be saying, when you say fellowship, with our spiritual family, But the fundamental principle that I hear coming across from this tenet, from this principle, is that of deepening relationships. Yeah. Yes, with our spiritual family, but also I'm sure it should also mean being more deliberate about deepening relationships with our loved ones as well, our biological family. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
As part of Sabbath observance?
I think that one has obviously one's own faith and the way one expresses it in private with reading your Bible and praying and that sort of thing. But then you have your nuclear family. And not all of us have that. I myself was the only person of faith in my family. But if you have a nuclear family that all share a common faith, then I think it's important maybe to open Sabbath together in that setting before the greater community comes together. But I'd like to add something else here, and that is creation or ecology as a whole. Because Sabbath has been connected through the creation act to creation. And so it is appropriate to appreciate ecology and even be advocates of caring for creation. So the problems with global warming are not something that Christians should just put aside as though climate change doesn't matter. No, we should care for this earth. I think the Sabbath is a call to care for this earth and be able to fellowship with the earth, not only other people but other creatures.
I love that.
Myself and my wife are big fans of our pets, and I think that's important.
I love that. Yeah. Fellowship with every of God's creation. I love that. And then so we've mentioned rest, we've mentioned a fellowship, we've mentioned worship, and then any other one?
I think ultimately we come down to God's mission, God's purposes in the world, and for that we would turn to, I suppose we'd call it Christian service. Where we're not working for ourselves anymore, we're working for others. So caring for those less fortunate than ourselves. Just doing simple things for people, being kind, being generous, asking oneself, what is the kingdom of God to this person that I'm speaking to? It's very, very difficult. I mean, perhaps we've all experienced something like this, where you come to a traffic light and there's somebody with a sign who's unemployed and he's asking for something. What would you, as a Sabbath-observing Christian, consider a service to that person? And that's not an easy question to answer. I think that paying them off, well, there you go. There's your $5 now leave me alone. I think it's something that the community needs to be involved in. And the only time the community can come together consistently as a community, as a complete community on the Sabbath, because they're freed up on that day. And we should have service missions on the Sabbath and not be afraid to do that. Jesus wasn't afraid to go out and heal people and care for people on the Sabbath, even though it got everyone talking there. Why is he doing this on the Sabbath? He could have done it on another day. But we are called on to cease from our own work, our own business. We're not called on to cease caring for others. And I think this is highly appropriate for Sabbath observance.
I mean, I love this. I absolutely love it, because sometimes we look at it. It's very easy to look at this conversation as and as an individual, but you're also challenging us that maybe we can also look at it as a community of faith, where even in your church program you try and incorporate these four tenets. There could be more, of course, but these four foundational tenets of Sabbath observance, such that we don't just. What I hear you to be saying is that maybe it's not ideal, it's not desirable to just worship the whole day. Sing praises the whole day, and then no rest, no interacting with others.
We don't want to end up being an insular community where my only friends are people who believe exactly what I believe, and I meet them on a Sabbath morning, and then I never see anybody else. I think every church should ask itself this question: if our church dropped out of existence tomorrow, would the general community in which that church is embedded even notice that it had gone missing? Are we active in our communities? And by communities, I don't mean the believer who sits on the pew next to me, but I mean the wider community where the church is located. Are we of any service to anyone in that community? Because if Christians are not prepared to help, then, where does that leave us as a faith?
I'm with you. Dr. Platts, there are people that are watching us now. This is my ending question. There are people that are watching at us, and they've been, following for the last 5 weeks this revelation, these exciting topics and themes around the Sabbath that we have been looking at. And some of them want to make decisions and start, to keep the Sabbath. But they really don't know where to start, number one, and number two, it's a bit foreign to them. What kind of encouragement would you give to such people, and how important it is to even try keeping the Sabbath?
I think that it's important to feel the Spirit move in this area, on this, I don't want to call it a doctrine, but this way of life.
Sure.
And you need to follow that calling and be convicted. If you're not convicted, then you're not going to do it, because it's quite a profound change. You need a support system. You need people who can understand the challenges you might face. With entering into the possibility of observing Sabbath. But what I can say is that there's a whole new way of living that I like to call the Sabbath economy, which is very different to the monetary economies of the world, the capitalist societies and so on, that govern the way we often forced to live our lives. And it's a new way of living, and it's worth entering. It's rewarding and fulfilling, and you will find peace there. Finding peace.
And it ends well and suits well with our theme of rest for a restless world, and which is why we're talking about the Sabbath. Dr. Platts, once again, thank you so much for joining us at Masikhanye.
Thank you.
Our viewers, I trust that you enjoyed and were encouraged by that conversation. And if you have any questions, are interested in finding out more about the Sabbath and how to enter this Sabbath economy, as Dr. Platts put it, please feel free to write us and talk to us. But we'll share those at the end of the program. But until then, don't touch that dial. We'll be back soon.
Greetings, friends. We're glad that you have chosen to join our series, Stories of Hope. And we want to offer you this free gift, a book entitled Hope for Today's Families. We look at issues such as preventing abuse, preventing marital distress, how to deal with children. I know that you will find this book as a welcome gift. We are looking forward to hearing from you. May God bless you.
Welcome back to Masikhanye, Rays of Hope, as we are concluding this, what has been an interesting time where we are discussing the Sabbath as a lifestyle. And to end our show today, I am joined by Mbunge, who is a partner at Mazars. Bongi, welcome to Rays of Hope, Masikhanye.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
The last time you were here, of course, when you joined us for our discussion on hope for the marketplace, you were here primarily around your role as a corporate executive. But the truth is you do have other roles, family, community. Please talk me through those. What else is Mbunge involved in?
Oh, well, that's a few hats that I'm probably wearing. The most important being family, I suppose, and really, shaping that in a manner that that reflects your values in terms of your lifestyle that you lead, and also because our kids are quite young, to model as best we can the truth in the sense of the word that they ought to just use in terms of how we lead our lives. So that's quite important in my life. And obviously, I've mentioned my immediate family. You know that I'm somebody's friend.
Yeah.
I'm somebody's. I've got my extended family as well. And then I think quite pertinently, in terms of the workspace, that's something that we've spoken a lot about in the previous session. My husband and I are both in professional services, which is quite demanding. And then we have the privilege and the opportunity of really serving from a Christian perspective in terms of our church, which also spans into the community, I suppose. But I do want to say that my role in terms of corporate also directly contributes into the community, in how we basically take business down that way, so that they can be able to impact more than anything else. But I must say, from a family perspective, our core values, we have 5: integrity, curiosity, service, kindness, and excellence. So those are the things that permeate out of that. And I do volunteer my time as a non-executive director in certain boards, and those are carefully selected out of my passion and purpose, so that I can actually just extend my affinity and just share my skill.
Yeah, and then so you've just mentioned family, and of course by that you're a wife, a mother of 2 very active daughters, and you're very much involved at church as well. Yeah, you're very much involved with church, and then of course, as you've said, you're serving on boards in the community. That's a whole lot of demand on your time, and which is of course limited for everyone. So how does an average day looks like for Bongi?
It starts very crazy. If probably all parents, and specifically parents currently of young children, will really relate to that. I'm quite, the blessing is I'm married to the father of my children. He's the father of my kids. He's not a babysitter. So therefore, he's quite conscious of his depository into their life at 100%, and I do the same. So our mornings are the first hour and a half is really frantic, from just juggling it all. We have 60 minutes from when they wake up to when they have to hit the door. And that's just something that we've mastered in terms of preparing the previous night and whatever. So when we come back from that, it's almost time to start my day. On average, my week, a good week has got a minimum of 20 meetings in that 5 days. So inadvertently, it means that the days are longer. There's no 8-hour day. But you spread it in terms of the balance that you want out of it. I think nobody cares which hours I work, and that's really a privilege of flexibility, which is really, really important. And therefore, from that perspective, and when you're cut off at a certain point in time, so that you can get into home preparation and the whole routine, which is also balanced. I do 95% of the meal preparations at home.
Sure, I love that. I love that. Delegate everything. You delegate everything else, but this one, absolutely.
That's my responsibility. My husband does religiously the girls' devotion every night. So he does bedtime. He also does homeworks. I just review books over the weekend and kind of like, guys, can you pay attention to the spelling or whatever? It needs to be done. But yes, it's mainly meetings, running projects, managing teams, and really just blending that. Structure it in such a way that there are non-negotiables, in terms of dinner time, because that's quite important for us to just connect and detox from everything that has been for that day. And then I really just love the time after the girls have gone to bed. That's my favorite time of day.
Okay,
when
talk to me about
it's
it.
quiet.
You get to catch up as well.
And we
right?
sit,
Yeah.
we've seen some crazy times during the pandemic in 2020 where we didn't have domestic help, we were know. And we'd sit often in those evenings, just laugh it off. There was no other option, kind of like, can we identify that this is our lives, and that's quite important as well, because it's a transitional time. I believe it's a certain season that really leads on to something else in life. So that, it's very important for us that our girls are committed to something else, which is the extramural activities, and it bounces really between our schedules in order to make it happen. Yes.
Look, the reason I needed to touch all those, tenets of your life is because, I know that you're a very busy person, and you're on top of those very equally important roles. You are also leading a demanding, corporate life. Now, and I know that you are a very committed Sabbath observer. Now, when you look at that, the idea of a mandatory entire day cessation, complete cessation from work, could easily seem like, a disadvantage, a liability of some sort compared to your other colleagues who do not have those religious considerations, and they can use Saturdays, or they can use every day actually to catch up on the projects, to catch up on the work. And what has been your experience with Sabbath observance and operating in the very high impact and demanding corporate space you're operating in?
I think it's about being organized and sweating that detail to the T, and knowing where you're going to come out when, and how do you handle the communication around that to manage all sorts of expectations. And then when you need to deliver something of good quality, so that the Sabbath is appreciated.
Sure, exactly. So they don't blame that. You don't even come to meetings on Saturday. And I'm with you.
So the Sabbath is valuable for all stakeholders involved. I think that when those kind of balls drop, then the inquiry will naturally go into that state. However, I must say that when I was doing my postgrad full time, I found the Sabbath most challenging. All our tests were on the Sabbath, and these were 5-hour marathons. So for us, it meant that we will be at church the whole day, and at sunset, we start writing our test. So we'll write right into midnight, 1 a.m., and that's just how it is. Because you can't interact with the other students, you can't lapse a day. You have to manage that so that everyone has the privilege and the opportunity to write a test that they have not seen. But what I think is really valuable to mention here is that the Sabbath is there's no loss. And
that's interesting.
And really, it's just an added privilege. There's a guy, Bernard of Chavas, that frames something well that I can link to this. It says, regard yourself as a reservoir to a canal, for a canal distributes the water it receives instantaneously. However, a reservoir fills itself up and then disperses its water without any loss to itself. So that's how I see it. I see it as a fill me up of some sort. It's like, I'm like I'm recalibrating, I'm being nourished, I'm getting more rest, even physically, not just spiritually. And then I'm reconnecting to my core. So I have the benefit of seeing it two-dimensionally as something that prepares me for the week ahead. However, every Thursday I prepare for it in advance, so that from a process perspective, that's what I do. But from a really being fed perspective, it prepares me for the journey ahead.
I love that. I love that because normally when we talk about the Sabbath, And we tend to, emphasize, and rightly so, and amplify the rest part.
Yeah.
And yet in the same commandment, there is a deliberate mention of all your work you will do in the 6 days. So there is also a working part in the very same commandment. And so what you're saying is that you appreciate the Sabbath as much because of the rest that it gives you from a week, but you're also saying that it prepares you for the week ahead as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
No, absolutely, because you see, we should, coming out of the Sabbath, we should be in a position to start working. It's just privilege that, a typical work week starts on a Monday. Not for me. On a Sunday, I have got to look at the week ahead. I have to kill some emails. I have to plan some projects. And then I'm ready. I'm really ready to push play on Monday. And really, that introspective time and that time of reflection that is in the Sabbath, and just that time of connecting and down. Because it doesn't start when the lights go on a Friday evening. It starts in your mind, in your psyche, from about 3 o'clock, when the sun is still up. And you're kind of like, whatever I'm doing now, I'm going to kill it soon. It kind of like I disconnect myself quite early so that I can actually have the privilege of rest. I think that quite pertinently, there's nothing wrong with the sundown after the Sabbath and actually just starting your activation in terms of your work right at that instant. It's just that we choose not to. So it being a depository of strength and wisdom and foresight into the following week makes it such a special prerequisite into how our lives are framed, and how we continue to draw strength from it. As the week goes, because at about Thursday you're no longer that well calibrated. But how do you center every day? So it's not a once-off privilege that you never really go back to, but how do you center yourself every single day to kind of like keep drawing that strength is probably one of the blessings that just keep unfolding.
I'm with you. Okay. Bongiwe, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, I'm glad that earlier on you also mentioned your, how you related to your Sabbath during your studies, because the truth is there are people that have been watching this program and they really want to adopt and adapt into this Sabbath lifestyle, and others as well that are already keeping the Sabbath that are watching us right now, but sometimes it seems like the Sabbath can be a limitation. So many things are happening on Sabbath. Sports at school is done on Sabbath. As you mentioned, exams at school are done on Sabbath. Sales in the malls are on Sabbath, and such that people look at the Sabbath and as a threat to them being equal with others or even getting ahead. What do you say to that young person, to that starting professional that wants to stand for their faith, that wants to stand for their belief, but they look around and they see this might actually be a hindrance from them getting ahead? Yeah,
I think that I'm quite happy with you framing that as a lifestyle.
Sure.
Because that's exactly what it is. And I remember earlier on, as a young parent, that it was very challenging because you get school parties on a Sabbath, and really your child is having an opportunity of making friends for the first time, wants a sense of belonging, wants to be in the inner circle. There's no greater time than to pour into them all that the Holy Spirit can actually enable you to do, because you will experience the resistance initially and the hurt and the pain and the anguish. 6 months down the line, they're answering themselves to their peers. Which day is your party? Oh my goodness, I can't come. Which day do you want the play date? Oh no, Saturday is out of the way for us. And then you really start to harvest from that. And I think that, when it comes to young people, and friends, and and that kind of thing, it can be seen as a limitation. But how do we keep coming back to the privilege of the saturating time on the Sabbath. That frames our identity, that reaffirms us you are on the right path, that also pours into us to say, don't worry about these external factors. I'm sorting everything out for you. So to come back to God's promises, I just want to end it off and say that, you know, the promises of God are contingent upon a process. And we have the privilege of actually taking a hold of the process and running with it to unlock and untap that fountain of blessings. I love it when Psalm 37, you know, says, I was young and now I'm old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken by the Lord, nor his children begging for bread. What makes us anxious is the thought that somehow this will render us inadequate, but actually it's a revealing point for God to move us exactly where we need to be. And there must be no fear or anxiety on that point because we are strategically positioned.
Bongi, exactly where we need to be, and I love that, and the fountain of blessing, that is just a perfect place to end it. Mbunge, thank you for joining us.
Such a pleasure.
Our viewers, I trust that you have found this episode, and indeed the entire series where we looked into the Sabbath as a fountain of blessing, even in your experience, that you have seen that indeed God is interested in your health, that is interested in your relationships, and that is interested in your entire holistic well-being, and that the Sabbath is a sign of that. As Jesus himself says, the Sabbath was made for man. I hope and I pray and I trust that you have seen that this blessing of the Sabbath is also meant to bless you as well. And if you have any questions about the topic of the Sabbath and any other that we've touched on this platform, please feel free to write to us at the email address that you see at the bottom of the screen, masikhanye@cc.adventist.org. Until next time, go out there, don't hide that light, and make this world a better place. Masikhanye.